Hey, here's a video for our Unit 1 Experimentation and Investigation ISN test. So this one needs to be in your notebook, taped in from the very beginning. So if you flip straight to your table of contents, the beginning pages will be your appendix. On page 10, you should have the title page, Investigation and Experimentation, Unit 1. On page 11, there should be a full table of contents of all of our notes, labs, and activities we've done in class for Unit 1. Please see posted picture on School Loop of this table of contents. On page 12, there should be your vocabulary words for this unit, where you cut and pasted and highlighted the areas for writing a lab report. On page 13, you should have the observation and inference paper where we practice making observations and inferences and defining using them in class with labs. Directly across on page 14 should be your scientific method flowchart. On page 15 should be the fortune fish using the scientific method in practice, a lab we did with the fortune fish, determining what made the fish move. Across from that should be page 16, the scientific method in action, the case of the berry. On page 17 should be your notes for testable hypothesis, a control, and a variable group. On 18 should be your notes titled Control and Variable Notes. Again, this is my printed out PowerPoint presentation, but your notes will be handwritten. If you're missing these notes, please look on our School Loop locker for the day we did them in class. On page 19, I have the peculiar pepper lab data where we drew and labeled the independent and dependent variables, as well as our control and constants in our pepper lab. On page 20 is where you actually recorded your lab data and have your pictures and diagrams with results. On page 21, I have the Lucky Die Lab where we practiced analyzing data and collecting data in data tables. Page 22 was our notes on how to calculate mean, median, mode to analyze our data sets in science. This should be on page 22 and handwritten. Again, these are my PowerPoint notes. Yours will be done in handwriting. Page 23, I have experimental calculations where we practice finding the mean, median, mode and identifying the variables in an experiment. Across from that were your notes, mathematically how to calculate the mean, median, mode on page 24. On page 25, I have a warm-up from 9-11 asking what Sultan is and how graphs help us in science. We also have our data tables from the ice lab with the temperature where we frequented 5-second increments of time and recorded the temperature. And across from that on 26 is the actual graph that we created using the Sultan technique. On page 27 was your Sultan graph practice where we looked at bar and line graphs. Page 28 was writing your procedures, effective uses and how we should write procedures in science. On page 29 was marking the text, how to read nonfiction text in science. And again, that's on 29. And under it, I have a warm-up from 9-13 about effective procedure writing and using a scale. We also had on this page the alien art assignment we did, drawing directions for drawing a stick figure, and our exit card for procedural writing. Across from this was the article we used for the reaction rate time on page 30 about finding the text while driving time is doubling. On page 31, I have a warm-up from 9-19, and I also have the exit card on how to write procedures. And this is where we wrote our lab conclusion from the reaction time lab and identified the format. On 32 across from that was the reaction time lab, Think Fast, where we recorded our data. On page 33 was the handout, how to write the best conclusion in the lab ever. And underneath it was a warm-up from 9-17 about reading articles in science. Page 34 was your rough draft to the finger maze lab that we typed up as a final lab report. Page 35 was the Zapping of the Brain Improves Fine Motor Skill article we used to connect to our lab for the finger maze. Page 36 is your notes for typing the finger maze lab. Page 37 is a warm-up from 9-24 about using Excel. Page 38 is your directions on how to graph with Excel, and we practice that with birthday lab data. On page 39, I have a warm-up from September 25th, explaining how to use Excel, and also practicing measuring, how we measure things using a metric ruler. On page 40, we have a metric system notes, Again, I was giving these notes, they're not in my notebook, but you should have these handwritten. If you don't have these, access them from our agenda that day. The metric system notes are posted. On page 41 is the metric scavenger hunt, where we run around practicing metric conversions. So that's on page 41. And under it, I have a warm-up from 9:30, looking at what scientists measure and how to convert within the metric. Page 42 is how to convert in the metric system using base units and converting. Page 43 is the distance the surfer had to travel, practicing metric conversion and distance. I have reading and note-taking guide on 44. 45 is measurements in science, practicing how to find triple beam balance measurements and also rounding. 46, measuring mass, our lab on triple beam balances. Page 47 should be your volume notes. 48, the lab on mass of liquid, finding the mass through difference. Page 49 was the metric article. Page 50 was the measuring length with metrics. And page 51 should be your study guide.
Attention, research